Maya Tailfeathers and Frank Wolf.
All right, open up to the floor for either Maya or myself. Questions? Anyone? Anyone? Yes.
Well, your film is wonderful. It's the heart talking. Usually those movies are about the mind. This one is about the heart, and it really touched me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don't be shy. We won't bite. Yes.
How many how many ridings do you go through for members of Parliament on that trip? And is it Nathan up in Kitimat? Does he still have a seat?
Yes, he does.
Yes.
He's actually put his hat into the NDP leadership race. You know. Very good candidate. Speaks his mind. He's not like your typical politician, as you've seen by the interview. But I mean, his riding is just huge. If you look at a map of his riding, it actually, geographically takes up about a quarter of BC's land area. So it's basically it's about halfway between the coast, almost all the way over to Prince George, and all the way up to the border. So it's a massive area that he represents.
I thought you did a marvelous job of staying relatively unbiased, first of all.
Thank you.
Good on you for that.
Yeah,
Did
he said basically I stayed relatively unbiased. Very nice.
Did you encounter a lot of anger? I mean, there wasn't a lot of people. You mentioned that you didn't get a chance to interview anybody in the Alberta offices when you started off. Did you run into any opposition that was unfriendly?
Yeah, as far as like the Enbridge thing, I tried multiple times before my trip, corresponding with their PR guy for BC to try to get an interview arranged to talk to them, to get their side of the story, but they refused me. They said that they thought I was not going to give them a fair shake and that sort of thing, so they kept saying no. So, it didn't really matter. Basically, everything I shoot is within the context of the journey, so everyone I saw, it wasn't set up anyways. I had, because we started in Fort McMurray, I could have set up with the Enbridge guys and interviewed them at their offices, but because they said no, then everything else just kind of, freestyle, being kind of open to the moment, just kind of talking to people. I'm not going in aggressive, I'm not going in confrontational. I just want people to tell me what they think about this issue, and that's all you're doing. And also, we're not rolling in with a crew. It's just like me with a camera like this big, and just like some tourist with a handy cam, pretty much. And it seems people have seemed pretty willing to talk. And everyone you saw, they signed waivers and everything to be in the film. So they didn't. And I was asked them to sign the waiver after the fact. I'm not trying to trick anyone into anything. So, yeah. Yeah.
Just a question for Elma. So I understand that you were arrested recently. Besides being a filmmaker, you also get yourself arrested. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Should I repeat the question?
Please.
I was recently arrested. She was asking about that. I went home, actually almost a month ago to the blood reserve, just to visit family and friends, and there turned out to be a small blockade, and by small I mean 2 women, one of which is an elder, who had parked their car and were holding 2 signs on an access road to the well sites. They've actually built 3 wells on the blood reserve now, it's really frightening because they're close to my family's homes. Anyway, I took part in the blockade. We've done everything for the last year, contacted every level of government, contacted the oil companies, asked to speak with our chief and counsel, asked to speak with the Energy Resources Conservation Board, which turns out is actually 60% funded by industry, so it's not an objective regulatory body. And that's the case with so many government regulatory bodies, is their funding is from industry. So at that point, it was pretty much our only choice. So we set up a blockade, a peaceful blockade, and demanded that they stop with the fracking. There was at least 30 employees working on the well site, none of which were actually band members. So like they were saying in the film, most of the time they say that it's going to generate employment, it's going to be a form of economic development, it's going to be good for the community, which in this case it clearly isn't. So yeah, I was arrested and I spent the night in jail, 10 hours in a blood tribe holding cell, myself and 2 other unarmed women, along with another lady who was in the drunk tank. So it was, it was an interesting night, to say the least. I've been charged with intimidation in breach of the criminal code, section 423(1)(g). And I'm clearly a really intimidating person. So our next court date is scheduled for October 17th, and we're kind of just waiting to see what happens then. This is the first time I've ever had to face anything like this, so we don't really know what the next step is. We just want the fracking to end. We don't want this on our land. We don't want it to affect our people and the well-being of our people for generations to come. So yeah.
Question over here. Hi,
Oh, I'm sorry.
please.
Okay, continuing on that theme for the, you said your land was sold
Mhm.
and you had no say in it. Do you elect your elders? Do you elect the people that sold the land?
Yeah, our chief and council is an elected body, but this is becoming a trend where oil companies and large resource development companies are taking advantage of people who are in situations like we are. There was a $50 million signing bonus with the promise of economic development. So obviously, as a marginalized population where we have a 70% unemployment rate on reserve, the idea of economic development, the idea of jobs is a very enticing one. So I hope that they had the best interests of our people in mind when they did this. However, they clearly didn't do their research. And we've had no say in what's been done with that $50 million. There have been distribution checks too so far. One was handed out 10 days before Christmas for $800. Each tribal member got $800. That's what I used to fund this film, so that's why it said it was funded by the oil company. The second distribution check was for $300. So multiply that money, all those checks, they add up to a lot. It could have been used for infrastructure building. I mean, we don't even have playgrounds on our reserve. So it's a really troubling situation, knowing that oil companies and resource companies are willing to exploit people who are already so exploited and oppressed and marginalized.
Question in the middle.
Frank, you put up the number for the Prime Minister's office at the end there, and I'm wondering if anybody in BC at the political level has a say, or what is the status of that?
It is a federal decision. So the National Energy Board is a federal organization. So it's today is actually the last day, I think, to sign up to speak at the Joint Review Panel in January and February. I'm not sure if it's too late to get on that now or not. But yeah, and then the public have their say, one last chance to voice their opinion at various locations around BC. But it is a federal decision. But I mean, there's also lots of other recourse. I mean, First Nations definitely have recourse. They haven't signed away their lands through any trees or anything like that. In 2006, Enbridge tried to do the same thing. And now they've kind of come back with this kind of rejig plan with a lot more money, a lot more PR to try to push it through, 5 years later. So yeah, so there's definitely, recourse that even if they do go ahead with it, but it shouldn't get to that stage really. So there's still a chance they can say no, although the National Energy Board has rarely seen a gas or mining project that they haven't given the thumbs up to. So can't hold my breath.
Sorry, down here in front.
Hi.
Yes.
Not to suggest at all that resistance is futile, but we're looking at 4 more years of a Tory majority government. What are the chances, do you think, that this won't happen?
Oh, she's saying we have a Tory majority government, so for 3 or 4 more years, the chances of it not happening. But like I said, it's, yeah, I mean, Mr. Harper's never seen an oil and gas project he probably didn't like. But yeah, I mean, you just fight the good fight and see what happens, cross that bridge when you get to it. There's still, like I said, if it does go ahead, there's definitely a recourse in BC because of the will of British Columbians who don't want this thing. There's definitely, that there's going to be a lot of resistance by First Nations and everyday folks in BC to it. So, I mean, last year at the Union of BC Municipalities, they had a couple of motions passed almost unanimously, or 95%, I think, to not allow tankers to come up to the coast, and also to not allow this pipeline to go through BC. So those are both, passed at the most basic, most representative level of government, municipal. So the will of the people is definitely there. It's just there's larger powers that are trying to, kind of play this chess game. So yeah.
Please.
Yeah, are you aware that there's already tankers in the Burrard Inlet?
Yeah.
Kinder Morgan and Company?
That's right. Yeah, Kinder Morgan has the only pipeline that's right now sending tankers out to Asia as well as the States and stuff like that. Yeah.
And how many tankers are actually getting in and out of the?
Yeah, the numbers are, they're not massive. The Enbridge one would definitely be way bigger as far as numbers, but and also it's far more treacherous than the North Coast as well. I mean, it wouldn't be good if you had a tanker hit out here, but it's relatively wide open for tankers here. So I mean, something could still happen, but the treacherousness of the North Sea, which I've spent time in for sure, like the North Pacific, and that whole channel, Douglas Channel, is like nothing else a tanker goes through in the world right now. So it's definitely a different ball of wax, and the number of tankers that will be going out there also just increases the possibility as well. Yep. Yeah.
Firstly, I just wanted to say to Maya that imagery from your film is so incredibly powerful, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And secondly, I wanted to ask, what can we do from here to prevent this pipeline from happening?
Yeah, so I have these cards up here which you can take and, am I sending them? Where do they go? Oh, they go, the camouflage. Yeah, so you can send those to the government. The main thing, I mean, if public will, I mean, in the end, it is a democracy, public will, you would think would mean something. But basically, if you can speak up, or if you haven't signed up yet, there might still be a chance to sign up for the hearings in January and February. But if you go to Pacific Wild, the website, they've got lots of different options and avenues that you can kind of attack this at. So pacificwild.org is a good source for kind of everything to do with this pipeline. I don't really have any distribution, as usual, but I'm going to be at the Planet and Focus Film Festival in Toronto. Yeah, so I don't know, it's kind of a hot potato depending on the distributor, I guess, what the film is about, but yeah, I have, I'm just, as I approach my trips, I'm just kind of open to the possibility, and I'll react when that possibility becomes something solid. So, drifting, a salmon in the stream waiting for a bug to hit the surface.
And last question right down here, thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to make a statement, but it's supportive and it'll be short. The statement is, if any of you are in any doubt as to the economic side of this argument, you might feel that for all kinds of non-economic reasons, this project is terrible, but you're not so sure about the economics. The way to measure economics correctly is to get the costs right and to get the revenues right. And if you do the careful analysis of who gets the costs and who gets the revenue, and you add all the possible costs, it doesn't make any economic sense. And for those of you who are looking for ways to take action that will be most helpful, I think the key to it is supporting those First Nations who are closest to the route of the pipeline. I'm thinking particularly the Haisla Nation in Kitimat and the Gitga'at Nation in Hartley Bay. If they have enough support from non-native people in British Columbia, there may well be a chance to stop that pipeline.
Thanks. In fairness, that wasn't a question. One more. Right? We have another question I saw. There we are, please.
Yeah, what was the hardest point in making this film? Like, was there any point where you're in the middle of your travel and it's just F it? I'm just going to turn around. Was there were there barriers along the way, or did it just all come together?
Yeah, there's always barriers, but you just keep on moving forward and keep shooting, and as long as you're moving forward, you get there eventually. So yeah, I don't really think that way. I guess it's just yeah, there was hard times through the Rockies and stuff like that, but very rewarding too. So nothing worthwhile is easy, So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Maya and Frank. Brilliant work, both of you. Thank you so much. Please, everybody, remember to vote. There are cards outside in the lobby, so don't remember to vote for the film. Thank you very much.